On the Road with Kelly and Bob is brought to you by Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings. Made in America, made to last. Coming up on this episode...
We even have a roadie channel that we all communicate on. And if somebody's traveling 66, a roadie will give them information.
Hi, we're Kelly
and Bob Phillips, and we're on the perpetual road trip of America's back roads,
where the journey is always the destination. And welcome to this edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. In case this is your first time joining us, what we do is really simple. We travel the roads of all 50 states in the U.S., we find stories, and we send them back for you to enjoy.
And those stories can be about, well, almost anything really, except we don't do controversy, politics, or negative stories because, frankly, we think you get an overabundance of that stuff on the news broadcast. So we go for stories about people who are doing something special to make our world a better place.
Earlier this year, we started doing a randomly periodic look at people and places along the famous road, Route 66. Why are we doing this? Well, because it's an Americana icon, for one. If you travel the road from start to finish, you will find a sort of history of our country along the way. And because this year marks the 100th anniversary of when Route 66 was approved.
By the way, Kelly, that brings up a question that at least one listener that I'm aware of already asked, and that is, why aren't we doing this series next year, which is the 100th anniversary of when Route 66 was opened? Well, a couple of reasons. One, because we want to call your attention to this so that you can make plans ahead of time. Next year, 2026, will likely be a crowded time on the road. So we figured you might want to see it for yourself before those crowds from the rest of the world arrive. And two, because next year is also the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, also known as, ready for this, Kelly? The semi-quincentennial.
The what?
The semi-quincentennial. Probably easier to just say 250th birthday. Anyway, we didn't think the 100th birthday of Route 66 and the 250th birthday of the United States should have to compete. So here we are.
We will continue our journey down Route 66 this week with a brief stopover in Kansas, where that state has a whopping, you ready? 13.2 miles of the famous road cutting across its southeast corner.
Well, it may be short, but that little piece of Route 66 is among the top spots on the famous road, partly because of a little movie made almost 20 years ago called Cars.
Faster than fast, quicker than quick. I am lightning.
In case you've been living under a rock, or you're just not a movie buff, Cars is an animated film series set in a world populated by anthropomorphic vehicles. It's an incredible example of personification because, well, you find yourself believing the cars and trucks that are the stars of the show are real, with actions and emotions just like ours. Pixar Studios and Disney did great work on Cars.
The first movie in the series came out in 2006, followed by sequels Cars 2 and 3 in 2011 and 2017. And those three films alone have created more than $1.5 billion in box office revenues. Then there's the merchandising, with more than $10 billion in sales during the first 5 years of the franchise. And the whole thing is set on Route 66.
All right, the reason we're giving you all this background is because that little 13.2 miles of Route 66 that cuts through Kansas was an important inspiration for this mega movie franchise, with the town of Galena, Kansas sitting at the epicenter of it all. That's where we met Renee Charles, who runs the restored Canotech service station, along with her sister, Melba Rigg.
Okay, so you're in Galena, Kansas, and the reason why we are here is because that old rusty, big old, we call it a boom truck, because Galena is a form of lead, so we were a lead mining town back in the day. Michael Wallace is an author, but he is the gentleman that wrote the book, The Mother Road. And so, from what I understood, he was hitchhiking back from the Marines and headed back. He's from Missouri, and so it inspired him to write the book, The Mother Road, meeting the people, seeing the places on 66. And so that's why John Lasseter called him, is because he said, I know you know everything about 66. And so he asked him to show his Pixar animators that. And they walked up our main street, and they saw this old International that's parked closest to the building here, parked against this building over here. And Joe Raft, who was the head of story, found him and was looking at him. Michael said he came up behind him and said, man, that truck's got character on it, Joe. And he said, it sure does. So it inspired him to make Tow Mater from that truck.
So that's the inspiration,
That is the inspiration, yep.
That's right. The inspiration for the vehicle named Tow Mater, often called just Mater, came from an old rusted tow truck found parked outside this former service station in Galena, Kansas. That truck is still sitting there, and you can go by and see it for yourself. And if you haven't seen the movies, well, Mater became quite the star of the show.
Oh, man! Hook 'em up, Mater. Where am I? You're in Radiator Springs, the cutest little town in Carburetor County.
So these days, Renee spends her time showing the original Tow Mater truck to tourists that stop by from all over the world.
Well, right now he's a big bird's nest. See all the birds? Like, they really make a mess of it.
So this vehicle right here,
This old International is the inspiration for Tow Mater. So he was parked against that brick building and had a tree growing right up through the boom, as you saw in the picture. And so they assumed, I'm thinking, that it was a tow truck like the tow truck here, but it actually was, we call it a boom truck, which is pretty much a tow truck. You're pulling things.
and this is the inspiration for
Tow Mater.
Tow Mater in the movie Cars.
In the movie Cars.
And selling burgers and souvenirs to those same tourists, all while educating them on why the 13.2 miles of Route 66 that cuts across Kansas is so alluring, and why Galena was so important to the success of the movie Cars.
Tourist season usually starts in April. I have a lot of foreigners start, and there's a lot of tour guides that have gotten to be a close friend of mine. So we get a lot of people from Norway, a lot of people from Australia, Germany is a lot. And I'm amazed how many foreigners I've already have coming in. Right now it's people from Spain and Brazil, and they say this is usually their time that they take vacation. But it starts in April and probably goes all the way to August, depending on the weather. And hopefully it'll be bigger and better this year because, 2026 is when we have our centennial, and everybody's doing all kinds of new stuff.
What is the love for 66? Because like you said, you've got so many people that come here, they lay in the middle of the road, they take pictures of all the signs. We've done it.
I've done it.
This morning.
Yeah, I've done it. I say for people from the United States, it's memories. It's the mom and pop cafes. For me, it was I always remembered the teepees. I always, even when I was little, and the dinosaurs, the Grand Canyon. Those are things that I remembered as I was traveling, and the closeness that we had as we was traveling. So I think it's just the memories or the nostalgia. My mom's from Joplin. My dad was from California, and they divorced when I was 2, so she would take a little Volkswagen Bug, throw me and my sister and brother in it, and we would drive 66 all the way to California to visit that family. And 66 was the safest route. So, I got to see all the cool icons before some of them disappeared. But I really didn't get it until my husband was in the military and we were stationed over in Germany. And one of his friends was dating a little German girl. And she said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Joplin, Missouri. And she goes, Route 66. And she was more excited about it. Every one of the foreigners say it's a dream of a lifetime. And so I just asked one guy one day, why is it a dream? And he said, you can get America all in one travel. You get the mobsters in Chicago, and you get the cowboys and Indians in Kansas, Oklahoma, you know, and in Missouri, and then you get the movie stars and everybody out west, you know. He said, so it's all inclusive, and it's such a trip.
Renee, do you realize how many of your memories are tied around Route 66 now?
Yes, especially I've got 2 Volkswagens in that building that they both need to be fixed. My kids bought them for me, so hopefully when I'm 66, they'll be done. So yeah, just memories of 66.
Renee is full of stories about Route 66. Talking to her, you can see what an impact this road, and now the movies about it, have had on her life.
There is a funny story about Renee's sister, Melba, that we want to share with you. You see, when they first opened the old Canotex gas station as a Route 66 tourist attraction, Renee and her sister worked here together.
Prior to it being a gas station, this was the Banks Hotel. So this whole block, from that corner to that corner, was a Banks Hotel. And so I was told that they couldn't see around the big monstrosity. And they would run several times into the White Rose gas station that was across the street. So I think it was in '39, I found an article where they tore the Banks Hotel and they put this service station up. But my sister, she ran it. She became known as the Mouth, Melba the Mouth, because, and there's a funny story to that too. But
Is she in the movie Cars?
Well, you know, she feels like she's in the second movie. She's in a video that they did, like an extra video. And that's the part where she became the Mouth, and I'll explain that. But she used to run out to the corner and flag people down and say, come on in. So she really did get the people to come in here. So.
She would flag them down off the street.
Oh yeah, she's nuts, my sister's nuts. She's older than me. But she would do that, and then they would come in. But the reason why she's called the Mouth is after Cars 1 and they wanted to do Cars 2, they went along, Pixar went along and talked to all the people on Route 66, you know, and wanted to ask them, how did the movie affect you? And they came here and they started talking, and my sister started talking to them. And I said, Melba, and she said, hey, can you get rid of her because she's going to keep interrupting me and correcting me. And, you know, we argue all the time anyway. And I said, hey, and so the lady goes, hey, Renee, let's me and you walk up Main Street and you tell me about Galena. And so we did. My sister kept them here over an hour. And so when we got back, 2 weeks later, Serena, the lady that walked me uptown, she said, Renee, she said, I know your sister's name is Melba, but I didn't get her full name, and how do you want her in credits? I said, I was so mad. I said, you call her Melba Jean, that's her middle name, and she hates that. The Mouth, Riggs. And she said, she cracked up, she said, well, she said, are you sure? And I said, I am absolutely sure. She said, that's how you want it. And I said, yes, Melba Jean the Mouth. And so that's how they put it in the credits. And so I thought it would make Melba mad, but it didn't. She bought her shirt and had the tongue hanging out of her mouth. And
you realize you made your sister famous.
I did. And
she's still Melba the Mouth.
She is
right?
still Melba the Mouth.
Always will be.
Always.
Needless to say, when the people who created the Cars movies visited with Renee and Melba here in Galena, they fell in love with them. And here's a little sample of why they call her Melba the Mouth. She's giving someone the quick story of all of this.
It's Melba the Mouth. They call me that because I do have a tendency to talk about you, but sometimes it's slowing down. I'm originally from Panama City, Florida. Actually, I am in Cars 2. I'm in Cars 2 on the Blu-ray DVD special feature collection edition of Cars 2 because I have a habit of talking too much and a little bit too fast. So, you are in the home of Toll Mater. The original Toll Mater was found against that wall in the year 2000 with a tree growing up through its boom. It looks like this. This book is written by Michael Wallace, who of course is the voice of the sheriff car. He actually came through in 2000 with Disney and Pixar to do the research for the movie Cars.
And that's why she will always be Melba the Mouth. She's even in the credits, by the way. The long-term effect that something like a successful movie like Cars can have on a town or an area is mind-boggling, but it can also have a long-term effect on the people there.
And that is certainly the case with Renee Charles.
I think Cars saved 66, and the reason I say that is because people my age or older were the ones traveling 66 besides the international travel. They were young people, people all ages. But domestic-wise, it was usually the older people that was traveling, because we remember, like me, I think that if it hadn't started, I think 66 would have faded. And the movie itself shows that people loved it. I mean,
Here in this state, you guys got like a little sliver of Route 66.
13.2
13.2 miles.
That's it?
That's it.
It just cuts across the southeastern corner,
Right.
just a little bit,
Right.
and connects Oklahoma with Missouri.
Exactly, yeah.
And here you are in Kansas with 13.2 miles.
Yes,
But
yes.
you guys have
You've
made a big
embraced
deal.
it.
The Rainbow Bridge has always been iconic. It's always been here. It's always been a big deal. Even when I was young, it was a big deal. But I think that once that movie came out, we just said we got to go. And I think a lot of reasons why Kansas was able to move so quickly is we're only 13.2 miles. The state of Kansas probably didn't recognize, I know they didn't recognize this section. We had to work to get a byway here because we weren't sunflowery enough. And so we became a historic byway. And so we're a Kansas historic byway.
Sunflowery enough.
That's what you identify Kansas with.
We're a mining town. Baxter was one of the first cow towns in Kansas. Riverton was kind of that's where the electrical plant serviced all of the mines and everything in this area. One of the reasons why I believe 66 came through here is because we were pre-paved. From our main street to the state line, the roadbed is actually mine tailings. And so it worked just like paving. And so they paved it because we had so many mines in this tri-state area.
This was early on one of the few paved parts of Route 66. Right, it was prior to
66, and even the bridge was built before 66 came through.
What does it mean to you to have so many young people now embracing Route 66?
Excited. I had like 3 gentlemen that were from Canada that came in here a couple weeks ago. I was so excited about them, and I said, well, why are you traveling? And they said, well, we watched Cars when we was little bitty, and we always wanted to come here. Even when they were that little and watched it, now there's other kids that's watching that, watching Cars, or I think it's Cars on the Road now that they got a Disney cartoon. So it's great.
If you visit Galena, Kansas, be sure and see the other areas along the 13.2 miles of Route 66 that runs through this state. There are now several places to visit in Galena, but you don't want to miss the old Riverton store and at Canotech service station where Tow Mater was discovered. You can certainly stock up on souvenirs that will last.
So basically, we try to stick with our area. So we're Mater, of course, so we try to get Mater cars. Everybody loves Kansas 66, so we try to get Kansas patches. I don't try to sell anything further down the road because that's just insulting to them. If, the Blue Whale, I don't want to sell Blue Whales because I want them to go see the Blue Whale. We have our own t-shirts, our own toys, and then we have a little restaurant. So my husband, he comes in and cooks, and he's a local, so everybody knows him.
And you got a lot of memorabilia.
Yes.
You've got the Route 66 Monopoly game.
Yes. So a lot of this actually was given to us by travelers, especially the vehicles and stuff down on the bottom.
Route 66 wooden shoes?
Yes.
What's that?
So this gentleman is Drace. He's from the Netherlands. He was a gentleman that would bring travelers from Norway and the Netherlands.
Like a tour guide?
Yes, on motorcycles. They would get on them in Chicago and drive all the way to California, and then another group would get in California and drive all the way back.
And I was impressed that you made that trip in a Volkswagen Bug, but on a motorcycle.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's dedication.
That's crazy, yeah. So Drace now so I'm a member of the Road Ahead Partnership, which we are working on different things. We actually got the Centennial Commission. We've got a bill in Congress to make Route 66 trail, so national trail. But Drace is actually our foreign advisor. So he comes once a year to one of our big meetings and discusses, what people overseas want to see.
It seems like everybody on Route 66, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in California, you're in Oklahoma, Kansas, everybody knows everybody. Is it one big family?
It is. We do have a roadie family. I have a young lady, her name is Brenda Sinclair, and she has been coming since 2007, and she lives in Ohio, and she travels 66, and she makes it a point that every place she stops, she buys something because she wants to support the people. There's another lady from Illinois named Penny that does the same thing. There's tons of travelers that do that.
And one of the things is, as you travel Route 66, if you stop and you go in and you talk to the individuals, the stories,
the magic, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know how to shut up, do we?
It's wonderful though, because
What a
you're
great
also
story.
We
passionate.
are. You know, you have to be. If you're not passionate, you can't stay.
Well, and it's one of those things where people actually put down their phone and talk to each other. And you listen and you get those stories and you go away and you've got this memory that you're going to have for the rest of your life.
You make friends, you know, on 66. You make lifelong friends. It's not the destination, it's the journey, and it is the journey. You see things that I still travel some of it, and oh, look what they got now, or I didn't know that was there, you know. So yeah, just take your time and enjoy it. It's what it's there for, in my opinion, to enjoy.
That's all for this edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. In coming weeks, we will have more stories about Route 66 and all the other things that make up the fabric of this place we call America.
And don't forget, you can listen to On the Road with Kelly and Bob wherever you get your podcast, or better yet, download that free Odyssey app. Listen anytime, anywhere.